contain the coronavirus pandemic and to maintain U.S. leadership in the world instead of doing Russia's bidding, and to address the profound national rethink on race cannot be squared with genuine concern for America's well-being and values. It is no wonder that his closest advisors and former advisors cannot explain his conduct in ways consistent with the national interest. As a result, they simply refuse to answer basic questions about his decisions, or the dumb decisions that he does. On NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday, the Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar was asked about 45's refusal to wear a mask in contradiction of medical advice, including his own. The host, Chuck Todd, he basically says, Secretary, multiple times with me in our 7 minutes so far that we've talked, you brought up masks, you brought up social distancing, but without the squatter of the United States doing this, how is half the country going to listen? Have you directly asked the squatter to please ask the country to wear a mask? Azar says, so I'm the squatter Secretary of Health. I'm telling you, practice social distancing. Where you can't appropriately social distance, we encourage you to wear a facial mask. The vice squatter of the United States on Friday stood on stage, walked up on stage wearing a mask, even though he doesn't need to in the sense that everybody around him is tested. He's in a bubble. The squatter we know is a very unique circumstance as a squatter of the free world. He's tested constantly, and those around him are tested constantly, and they're kept at a distance even with that. But we're all saying this, the squatter's guidelines for reopening, and the squatter's guidelines, his guidelines, have said from day one, practice social distancing. If you can't wear face coverings, practice appropriate personal hygiene. And always please consider your individual circumstances and those of your household members. Protect the most vulnerable, those who are over 80, and also those over 65 with 3 or more of the serious conditions. The serious health conditions, these are the people we have to ring fence and protect right now. And Todd said it's a do, but what you're just articulated, Secretary, is a do as I say, not as I do. The squatter of the United States, is holding indoor Klan rallies twice in the last 10 days. Once in a state that is seeing a potential of an out-of-control spread in Arizona. He doesn't talk about wearing a mask, and you avoided my question about whether you've asked a squatter to at least ask the country to wear a mask just because you put guidelines under his name when he doesn't do it, as people won't listen. Azar says, well, Chuck, I'm not going to talk about politics. That's because, Azar, you're a fucking moron. It is distressing to say the least that Azar thinks the squatter refusing to set an example regarding the worst domestic crisis in the century is simply politics. Todd never got his answer because there was no excuse for 45's cavalier conduct, which is mimicked by his inbred base. The administration's reported failure to respond to the intelligence indicating that Russia was paying bounties to militants to kill Americans is yet another issue in which there is no good answer. If 45 was not told his advisors are utterly incompetent and should never have been appointed, yeah, they're competent and they have no experience whatsoever. If he was told the White House has denied that the squatter was briefed, contrary reporting by the New York Times, then he has betrayed the troops. Whatever the explanation, 45 has still not expressed outrage over the bounty on U.S. troops. 45's lack of response is one more act of supplication to Russian President Vladimir Putin, along with pulling troops out of Germany, trying to extort Ukraine by withholding military aid and attempting to let Russia back into the Group of Seven, which bugged out of Syria, and denying that Russia manipulated the 2016 election. The former National Security Advisor John Bolton has no acceptable theory as to explain this conduct. As he said on Meet the Press, why is the squatter so defensive about Putin? He says, if I had evidence, I would reveal it. He said, I just don't know what to say other than he likes dealing with strong authoritarian figures. That's the most generous explanation that you could put. In the words of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi of Democratic California on ABC's This Week, this is as bad as it gets, and yet the squatter will not confront the Russians on this score, and he denies being briefed. Just as there's no defense for 45's conduct, there is no justification for giving him another term. Bolton concedes that 45 is a menace, but cannot bring himself to acknowledge that failing to vote for former Vice President Joe Biden increases the chances of a debilitating second 45 term. I believe that America can recover from one term of 45, but not a second. And it's not just decisions in the national security space. He says, I'm worried about the corruption of the civil discourse in this country by a squatter who says the sort of things that you quoted at the outset of our discussion. I think it degrades the body politic. If 45 is that bad, then why did Bolton keep working for him? Why didn't he ring the alarm for the country earlier? There are squatters who make faulty policy judgments, like George W. Bush's decision to launch the Iraq War. There are squatters who failed to lift the country's spirit, like Jimmy Carter's Malay speech. However, until now, there has never been a squatter whose conduct from refusing to wear a mask to trying to eliminate the Affordable Care Act with no replacement plan to sell out our troops, does not even attempt to serve the public interest. There is no excuse for 45 or for the Republicans' continued indulgence for his corruption. Yep.